World Without Fish, Chapter 4, page 51. Being the myth of nature's bounty and how scientists got it wrong for many years. But the real importance of a large number of eggs or seeds is to make up for much destruction at some time period of life. And this period is the great majority of cases is an early one. Charles Darwin on the Origin of Species. Scientists and fishermen have long disagreed. Fishermen often think that the scientists who study fish can't be believed because they don't spend as much time at sea as fishermen. Scientists don't trust what fishermen say because they know that fishermen haven't spent as much time in school as scientists. The truth is, scientists are sometimes wrong and fishermen are sometimes wrong. In the 1800s, when the study of fish and oceans was a relatively new science, it was the fishermen who were afraid that fish populations could be destroyed by catching too many fish, especially small fish. Scientists at the time believed that it was impossible to catch too many fish because fish produced so many eggs. One of humankind's most endearing misconceptions is that of nature's bounty. That's the belief that nature is such a powerful force that it is indestructible. Those with a religious explanation for the natural order have argued that human beings do not have the power to reverse God's creation. Even those who believe in Darwinism believe that nature is such a complex force that there is little humans can do to interfere with it. Darwin himself never held this belief. To him, nature was about destruction and survival, and human beings were just one part of this. Fish in particular were thought to be especially indestructible. This was because they produced enormous quantities of eggs. The fish most sought after by fishermen, codfish, were particularly abundant in eggs. A female cod that is 40 inches long, not a remarkably large cod, can lay as many as 3 million eggs. As fish grow older and larger, they produce more eggs. By the time a cod is 50 inches long, it can lay 9 million eggs. This remarkable fact led to a great misunderstanding. Back in the 17th century, Dutch scientist Anton van Leeuwenhoek was known as the father of microbiology, the study of the microscopic cells of which all organisms were comprised, as well as being the inventor of the microscope, attempting to count codfish. He counted 9,383,000 eggs in a single average size fish. About 150 years later, a book called A Cyclopedia of Commerce and Commercial Navigation tried to verify Leeuwenhoek's findings and concluded that the egg count was a number that will baffle all the efforts of man to exterminate. And celebrated French novelist Alexandre Dumas wrote in his spectacularly incorrect food encyclopedia, Le Grand Dictionnaire de Cuisine, published posthumously in 1873, it has been calculated that if no accident prevented the hatching of the eggs and each egg reached maturity, it would take only 3 years to fill the sea so that you could walk across the Atlantic dry-shod on the backs of cod. The message was clear. In the late 19th century, a time when new technology, such as engine power, was greatly increasing fish catches, and fishermen were beginning to worry that the new modern boats were taking too many fish. Scientists were telling them to catch as many fish as they could because it would be impossible to destroy fish populations. The egg theory was refuted by Darwin himself. He pointed out that nature would have to stop overpopulation. For example, if all the cod eggs hatched and survived so that the sea was crowded with codfish, there would be too many for the food supply so that many would die off. But this would not happen because the reason nature provided fish with so many eggs is that few can survive in the sea. Those not destroyed in storms are eaten by a wide range of sea creatures who, like humans, are fond of eating fish eggs. Mammals will usually have 1 to 6 babies. A bird will lay this many eggs, but a fish will lay millions of eggs. Only recently has science come to understand that a fish will usually only have between 1 and 6 surviving babies, just like a mammal or a bird. One of the most influential figures promoting the idea that it was impossible for fishermen to endanger fish populations was Thomas Henry Huxley, a British scientist. Huxley greatly contributed to understanding of the anatomy of animals. He was a staunch supporter of Darwin's theories and played an important role in the public acceptance of Darwin's theory of evolution. He was also the first to suggest that birds are the modern descendants of dinosaurs, a view widely held today. But on the subject of fish, Huxley completely misunderstood Darwin. He believed that Darwin's theory of survival proved that fish were indestructible, concluding that commercial extinction would force fishermen to stop hunting a species long before it reached biological extinction. On the side of 56, Thomas Henry Huxley, 1825 to 1895, an early and enthusiastic supporter of Darwin's theories. Huxley was a biologist in his own right and the first to apply Darwin's theory of evolution to human beings, an idea Darwin never explored. Back to the bottom of 56. Worried about the effects of technology on fish populations, the British government established a series of commissions to investigate these fears. Huxley was appointed to 3 of them. One of them was to examine the complaint by fishermen who caught herring in nets brought against other fishermen who caught fish on long lines of baited hooks. The herring fishermen had demanded that Parliament pass a law restricting the use of long lining. Huxley's commission rejected the claim from the herring fishermen as unscientific. They stated that fishermen, as a class, are exceedingly unobservant of anything about fish, which is not absolutely forced upon them by their daily avocations, which established the very harmful tradition of showing contempt for the knowledge fishermen acquire through experience. What they were saying in the end was that fishermen only know what they need to know in order to catch fish. While this may be a little true, the fact is that fishermen need to know almost everything about fish in order to do a good job of catching them. And no one has a deeper involvement in or greater concern for the preservation of fish populations. The commission also complained that the unscientific fishermen were interfering in productive modes of industry. In other words, by objecting to what they saw as destructive practices, they were trying to interfere with the progress of technology. Just as computers and cyber electronics have changed everything we do today, industry and mechanical inventions were changing the way everything was done in the late 19th century, an age that became known as the Industrial Revolution. Scientific, industrial, and technological process were seen as the great path to the future. It was only in the 20th century that we learned how such forces can also cause great damage. On the side of 58, Illustrated London News, 1883. This front page from a British newspaper depicts the opening of the 1883 International Fisheries Exhibition in London. Note Thomas Henry Huxley at far left. Last paragraph on 58. Speaking at the 1883 International Fisheries Exhibition in London, which was attended by representatives of the leading fishing nations of the world, Huxley gave a speech in which he said, "Any tendency to overfishing will meet with its natural check in the diminution of the supply." In other words, we would realize that we were overfishing by the simple fact that we were hauling in fewer fish. He further assured everyone that this check will always come into operation long before anything like permanent exhaustion has occurred. Here was science applying Darwinism to an important problem. If fishermen caused a decline in the population of fish, they could no longer fish that species because it would be too scarce, and that would allow the species to recover. But Huxley had overlooked an important part of Darwin's findings, which was that the survival struggle of a species depended on maintaining a large population. Huxley and his commissions were extremely influential in the governments of fishing nations throughout the North Atlantic for many years to come. Later in the 1880s, when the government of Canada was considering whether their fish populations would be threatened by new fishing technologies, they quoted from Huxley and argued that despite increases in fishing, the English fisheries show no sign of exhaustion. They concluded that it is impossible to lessen their number by the means now used for their capture. By the means now used for their capture. Here was the hidden trap. Many government officials and scientists had failed to notice that there was new technology being used with entirely new results. They held on to the view Huxley and others like him shared long after the reality of the situation indicated otherwise. And very few people in the world took notice of the fact that Huxley himself, after studying the impact of engine-driven net draggers in the North Sea a few years later, completely reversed his beliefs. Overfishing, he acknowledged, was not only possible, it was happening. The Story of Crom and Aelot, Part 5. 3 years after last visiting Serafino and his sons, Frank and Salve, Cram and Aelot went out with them on another fishing trip. "Serafina, you've changed the boat completely. Why are you dragging the net so close to the surface now?" "Not so many bottom fish around here these days, but the sea is loaded with herring, which are closer to the surface. We've sure got a lot of herring. It's good to have something." "Can you hear that, Serafina?" "I don't hear anything." "Exactly. It's too early for the whales, Crom. I thought whales were protected. No one can hurt them, right?" "That's true, Aelot. Crom, you're making your daughter paranoid like you." "I wasn't talking about the whales, Serafino. Where are the birds?" "There aren't any bottom fish to chase the herring to the surface anymore, so they went away. The birds were just an annoyance anyway." When they returned to shore, Aelot, Frank, Salve went to the beach to look for crabs. I can't find any. Yeah, we haven't seen any crabs for a while. That evening, Serafino brought Crom and Aelot back to his favorite restaurant, Captain Leo's, for dinner. I can't wait to eat a big halibut steak. I'm sorry, we haven't had any halibut in quite some time. However, we have grilled herring, poached herring, and blackened herring. What can I get for you instead?